This week on Quoted 2.0.
Most people think they're good at 6 things that have to do with their professional life. And then they spend their spare time trying to figure out how to be good at everything else that they're not good at. Incredibly successful high net worth individuals tend to think they're good at 1 or 2 things and spend no time trying to be good at anything else.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're here with Lewis Schiff, chairman of Birthing of Giants and Moonshot and Moneymakers. Lewis, how you doing today?
Good, Ethan. Great to be here with you.
I appreciate you coming on. All right, Lewis, I want to jump right into it because we recently had a conversation a few months back that really stuck in my mind and it hasn't left since. We talked about hustling versus working smart. Would you mind discussing or really explaining your stance on it?
So, when you're younger, and I'll preface this by saying I was really sharing with you, Ethan, a lot about the way I looked at the world when I was younger and doing my best to kind of match it up to where you are, because I know you as a young person who's just graduated from college. And so I was doing what they call transference. I was transferring from me to you. And so you were a great sport about it, because sometimes people are on the other receiving end of that transference and they're like, well, that's you, not me, but you were a pretty good sport about it. So I know that when I was young, I knew that I didn't know much. I kind of had a lot of humility. I would say definitionally, I have always wanted to learn from other people. This statement has always made so much sense to me. Learn from someone who's already done it. Like, that makes so much sense to me. But most of the world says, I want to learn on my own. They don't want to learn from other people. So I know that when I was young, really all I brought to the table was the amount of energy I had. I could work longer and harder than anybody. And a defining moment in my life, my business life, was when I was around a board table with a handful of other people, and there was a very monumental project coming up, and it was going to be really hard. And I said, well, good news, there's 24 hours in the day. And everyone groaned, because as I look back on that moment years and years later, I realized that I wasn't married. I had no children. I lived a very simple life. And so I was all about work. And what they were hearing was this punk kid saying, I've got no other responsibilities, so I'll be here 24 hours. But they're saying, well, I've got kids to pick up, and I've got, a husband or a wife who's waiting for me, and I've got other obligations. And so I learned that at that time, all I had to offer was energy. And that's because I didn't have brains. I didn't have experience. I didn't have wisdom. I just had energy. So I hustled. I worked harder than anybody, and I outworked everybody. And when you and I were talking a few months back, you were talking about kind of your state of mind about where you were looking at how to develop your career. And I said this is why I'm saying you're a great sport. I said, you're dumb, Ethan. You're stupid. You're stupid like I was stupid, which is to say we just got energy and ideas. We don't have any wisdom yet. And that the goal over time is to start to replace all that energy with wisdom. Don't work hard, work smart. And you're a great sport about that. And we had a great conversation about it. But I'm just saying I'm, a healthy 25 years or more older than you. So I look at the world as, how do I work smart now? How do I leverage my wisdom, my network, my experience? And you're saying, how do I outwork everybody around me? And I think that's exactly right. I just think that over time, you want to start to say, well, I'm not always going to have the energy and the freedom I have right now.
I fit the description of a lot of people that also hustle, I think. Right out of college, you're a male, all you want to do is grind and make money. And it feels fun. It feels like the right thing to do. And it puts you in a positive mindset of, oh, I'm out working everybody. I'm staying up till 10 p.m., 2 a.m., grinding, doing whatever.
Yeah,
How do you take steps to working smarter earlier on? Because it seems like the sooner you do that, although you're not working as much, you might be making more because you're streamlining things. So what steps can people who are like me take to achieve that in a way?
So it's sort of like a chicken and the egg question, because are you working hard because like that's your superpower, or are you working hard because you don't have anything else to lean on? And that's a good question. I everything I say to you are questions I ask about myself.
Yeah.
So I don't think I even thought about working smart when I was younger, because I just knew that working hard was my superpower. I could outwork everybody. Yeah, it's been a long time now, and now I want to work smart. So how do you do that earlier is your question. In almost everything in business, if you're starved of something, you'll compensate for it. Necessity is the mother of invention. Richard Branson has debilitating dyslexia. So you can put a spreadsheet in front of him. He doesn't know what he's looking at. His eyes will start to do dances, right? So he's not trying to figure out how to read a spreadsheet because he knows he's never going to get it. What he's gotten better at over the years is finding out which team members, how to hire people who can read that spreadsheet in a way that he'll never be able to. So he became a great team builder because he had dyslexia. So if you reverse that, I'm so hardworking, I don't have to be smart. Maybe if you start to starve yourself of the hard work, maybe if you said, I'm quitting at 9 p.m., you might start to work smarter because you can't work harder anymore. I know a great programmer, very, very successful, very successful entrepreneur who was just always meddling. He had about 25 people working for him, and was always meddling in their code because he was the best programmer of all 25 of them. And so what he started to do is only carry an iPad, because iPads are not really good for going in and doing code. They're just, they're pretty good for checking your newspaper or checking your schedule, but they're not good for writing code. And so he said, I always carry an iPad now because it stops me from meddling in their code. Maybe you got to put some barriers around how you work so that you can start to elevate that other part of you.
And it's being self-aware too of knowing that you do it. Like, it's almost like the first step is admitting you have a problem and this is it in a way.
So, well, you want to contribute in higher value ways all the time. Hard work is a great way to contribute. I mean, I admire it. I hire people. I'm always tempted to reach out to you to hire you. And then I think, oh, this guy's a wild man. He wants to do 1,000 things. He just can't, he wants to kiss every frog out there. But I love hard work. I think it's an incredible attribute.
So, Lewis, we met in Oxford, basically at a entrepreneur type seminar through Rider University. And something that I, as well as a lot of my colleagues, noticed rather quickly, if not immediately, was your ability to facilitate a conversation in a way where everybody in the room understood, which I think is sometimes missed, because sometimes it's, only the higher ups or maybe only the other entrepreneurs there would understand it. But I feel like every student was engaged and listening because it resonated with them and they got it. Where did that skill come from?
Well, that's such a wonderful thing to hear for somebody like me, because that's what I do for a living, is I facilitate conversations between groups. And so I run a school for entrepreneurs. And so, I've got a lot of different types of people in the room. So first of all, thank you. That's like the best thing anyone can say to me, truly. I really appreciate that. So the word is empathy. And people think they know what the word empathy means, but no one actually knows what it means. They think empathy is sympathy. In other words, you're supposed to make people feel good or supposed to care about other people. Empathy has nothing to do with feeling good or caring. It's just the ability to see the world through the eyes of another. The best example would be, I've heard peacemakers, people whose job it is to negotiate peace between, let's say, two countries. There's a very famous one, his name is George Mitchell. He said, you have to be able to see the world through the eyes of your enemy. You can't reach peace until you can see the world through the eyes of your enemy. And so I take that, that's not quite my situation, but empathy is, I've got these people in the room. In the room you're describing, we had some 20-year-old undergraduate students and some seasoned, very successful business owners. And my job was to empathize with both of you, both of those groups, and make sure that you're both receiving what you need. And I think that I have over the years worked on empathy as a skill set, as a talent. And so that's why it means a lot to me that you said that.
And it's funny too, because it's like, you wouldn't think that you having that high talent is coming from knowing other people.
Absolutely. I work with some serious business owners who kind of rarely get out of their industry. So, I might say, what do you do for a living, or what's your business about? And they will just throw a flurry of acronyms at me. I'm a TPL for the B2G. And I'm like, luckily I know what they're talking about now because I've been doing it a while. But I have a tremendous amount of self-confidence. And so one of the things I've always done is when someone throws those kinds of things at me, I'll say, I actually don't know what you're talking about. Could you please explain it to me? Whereas a lot of people would say, Am I not getting it?
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable saying, yeah, I'm not getting it. And I'm pretty smart. So there's something that this person needs to do differently.
So something that also has been a recurring theme in our conversations is you basically telling me to know what my first habit is. And I believe, if I remember correctly from our last conversation, your first habit is your ability to ask questions. Is that the foundation of what's led you to creating such successful companies?
Well, yeah, but it's also what led me to create a school, because the school's curriculum reflects the needs of my student. In other words, the whole business of Birthing of Giants, my school, is to be empathic to my students. And my students in this case are business owners. So I ask tons of questions. They tell me their answers. I learn about them. I learn what they need. And then I create a curriculum to meet the demand of what they need. So it's pretty straightforward for me, but asking questions is the skill which has allowed me to create a curriculum where when people go through it, they say, and I love the compliment you gave me. And the other compliment I love is when people say, as a result of going through Birthing of Giants, I'm able to see my company in a whole new way. And that's because I know what they want to learn, because I've been asking questions, about their gaps in their knowledge. And then I've been able to essentially assemble that information. And at the end of it, they say, oh, wow, I see my company in a whole new way. And that's like the highest compliment I can get. And it's all stems from the questions I ask.
Is it because you went into a little bit about your company, Birthing of Giants? I always feel like companies start as something and then it's almost like they morph into something different over time. Did Birthing of Giants start in a different way than where it is now? Like, was there tons that you just learned over time that you're like, oh my God, what am I doing right now?
So the converse, the first habit is do more of what you're good at. Okay, that's what the first habit is. But I'm going to give you the second half of that sentence, which is so important. And I will remind you, I have tremendous self-confidence, so I'm okay with this. Do more of what you're good at and less of what you're bad at. Nobody does the second part, less of what you're bad at, because nobody wants to believe that they're bad at anything. But I have such self-confidence. I know I'm bad at a bunch of things, and I'm okay with that. And so Birthing of Giants came out of a totally failed business where we were trying to bring the smartest and best entrepreneurs to up and coming entrepreneurs. And I, as the CEO, failed. I mean, somebody else could have done it, but I couldn't do it. And the reason I couldn't do it is because I'm not too good with marketing to regular people. I'm good at marketing to business owners because they're hard charging, they're type A, they're ambitious. I can get in their heads a lot better as a marketer. So Birthing of Giants came out of a totally failed attempt that I am totally responsible for, where we tried to market to, I'll tell you what we called them. This is a kind of a derogatory name, but we called them wantrepreneurs. They want to be entrepreneurs. And wantrepreneurs, I don't get. If you want to be an entrepreneur. Don't be a wantrepreneur. But when I changed that whole curriculum, I said, okay, wantrepreneurs didn't want to know what I had to tell them as a marketer. But entrepreneurs are dying to know what I have to tell them because it's exactly the content they were looking for. So Birthing of Giants comes out of the ashes of a project called Ben, powered by Ben, named after Ben Franklin, the first entrepreneur in America, where my shortcomings as a marketer were on full display. So I learned what I'm bad at, I stopped doing what I'm bad at, and I started doing more of what I'm good at. And that's where Birthing of Giants came from.
Do you find that to be a common problem with entrepreneurs in general, where they have everything in place, they have everything lined up, they know how to do everything or a good amount, but they're not marketing to they're not marketing to the right people, and they don't know how to, they just assume, like, to put myself in your shoes, that you were like, oh, these people are they're trying to be entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur, I can help them. So they just assume their own kind of like BS in a way where it's like, oh, these are the people that I want to market to. I'm going to market to them. Done. Period. No testing required. Is that a common theme that you find?
Not really. I think entrepreneurs are pretty confident like me, and so they're pretty comfortable with what they're bad at, and they figure it out, and they pretty much avoid it like the plague. The data I have from my book, Business Brilliant, is that most people, meaning there's a category I create, which we call the middle class, but let's just call them most people. Most people think they're good at 6 things that have to do with their professional life. And then they spend their spare time trying to figure out how to be good at everything else they're not good at. Incredibly successful high net worth individuals tend to think they're good at 1 or 2 things. and spend no time trying to be good at anything else.
Mm.
Think about that. If you're a regular person, you're dividing your skill set over 6 things, plus trying to figure out everything you're bad at. And the really successful high net worth individual is only doing 1 or 2 things all day long and nothing else. Of course, they're going to do better in those 1 or 2 things than you're going to do in your 6 things. So I think business owners, successful entrepreneurs are pretty good at doing what they're best at and trying not to do anything else. But the key to that is that they figured out what they're best at by sucking at so much other stuff. So what they do differently is they try and fail, try and fail, try and fail, try and fail, try and succeed. All right, I'll start doing more of that.
And then it's like throwing it through a filter, like you're narrowing it down to, okay, these are the 2 things that came out. This is how I make a diamond right here.
Yes. Now, if you're another type of person, if you're like a regular person, you say, well, I hate failing. But you might as well say, I hate learning about myself. Right? That's what you're saying. Because if you're saying I hate failure or I avoid failure, I don't want to be embarrassed. You know, I don't want to screw up in front of my boss or whatever that might be. You know, you are literally saying, I don't want to grow. That's why entrepreneurs do well, because they fail so much.
I think that's something that young entrepreneurs all need to hear, just so they just have it in their mind, like, oh, I'm supposed to fail. It doesn't even matter to me. Oh, I failed. Okay, it is what it is. I learned. But do you have any, and in a world too, where entrepreneurship kind of became this thing where it's cool to be an entrepreneur now. I'm assuming back when you were up and coming and when you were, you know, starting your first few businesses, it wasn't really cool being an entrepreneur. I know Norm Brodsky talks about it all the time. His mom was like, what the heck is an entrepreneur? What are you talking about? So what advice?
An entrepreneur was a guy who had like 7 gold watches on his wrist, and he'd pull his sleeve up in Grand Central Station and try and sell them to you.
So what advice would you have to young entrepreneurs nowadays, where there's so many paths to success and there's so many different things you can do?
Well, a couple things. One is, you know, one of the reasons we've gotten to where we've gotten to is that I'm talking about the media now. The media has like worked through so many groups and come out on the other end of it. Meaning, we used to really trust government officials back in the day, JFK. Now we don't trust them anymore. We used to trust our religious leaders. Now we don't trust them anymore. We used to trust Fortune 500 CEOs. Now we don't trust them anymore. We're just running out of people to trust. But they've managed to ascend entrepreneurs. You know, like we love Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, and now we're starting to not trust those people anymore, by the way. But for a long time, for about 20, 30 years, we trusted Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. And we thought, wow, that's really creative. They're really innovative. They're changing the world. Now, I don't know Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, but I mean, I'm sure that they're flawed like everyone else is flawed. But the media decided to make them look like rock stars. So a lot of younger people said, I want to be a rock I want to be a rock star. And so I want to be like Steve Jobs. And then it got replaced with a lot of modern, newer, younger people, you know, that are really amazing entrepreneurs today. And so the media said, these are rock stars. And a lot of young people said, well, I want to be a rock star, so I want to be an entrepreneur. And, you know, the truth of it is, and they've heard this a million times, they don't need to hear it again. It's very, very difficult to be an entrepreneur. It's a tough slog. You have to be willing to fail over and over again. I mean, you know, Jeff Bezos started this dumb thing, which is he was going to sell books over the internet. I mean, it was the stupidest idea. I don't know Jeff Bezos, but I mean, I grew up alongside him professionally speaking. So I heard about Jeff, you know, he was this guy who was going to sell stuff over the internet, books. Back at a time when people were afraid to put their credit card in the computer, they were almost positive it was going to go right to Russia to be used by hackers. And so, you know, any one of us could have done what Jeff Bezos did. We just didn't have his collection of skills and qualities that put him where he put him. But entrepreneurship is really, really tough. You have to be willing to do things that everyone thinks is dumb. And you have to put your back into it. What you're great at, Ethan, is really, really hard work. You know, you have to have the idea. You have to commit yourself to it. Very often other people think it's a bad idea. You have to overlook that. And then you have to work harder to make it a reality than anyone around you is or thinks they should.
When you hear 10 voices around you saying, no, don't do that, no, don't do that, and it's not coming from people who are just strangers, it's coming from friends, it's coming from family, you know, it's coming from people who you trust, and you have to be like, all right, like the heck with you for now, but I'm just gonna, I have confidence in this, I'm gonna go through with it anyway. So I think that's good advice for pretty much anyone to hear.
Well, you know, here's the big, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Here's the big pitch. If you're surrounded by people, including family, that say that your ideas are dumb or that you shouldn't do it, get away from them.
Mm.
Seriously, separate yourself from them. It doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means that you do not need that energy in your life. You may be right. You may be the next Jeff Bezos, or you may be the next 10,000 other people who failed. It doesn't matter. You need to go for it, and you need to cut out people who tell you not to go for it.
Was that something that, like, in a way, scared you early on, of not acting on all of your ideas and seeing any idea that you had either being carried out by someone else or just never getting to it? And then you were just like, I need this to be fulfilled.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was like super hungry and I would try everything and I wouldn't think things out very much. If somebody comes to me with a business idea now, I'm usually a pretty negative guy.
Mm.
That's because I know all the reasons why businesses fail now. I didn't know that when I was younger. Now someone comes to me and they're going to hear, well, this is the problem with that business idea. It doesn't mean I'm right and they're wrong. It just means that I have a lot more experience about why businesses fail. But I've always said, if somebody came to me with an idea for a website that, you know, people would take pictures of what they had for breakfast and they post it and other people could comment, I would say that's just a bad business. It's just a bad idea. So, I mean, I could be wrong, clearly, but you know, there are reasons why businesses fail. And when people come to me with ideas now, I'm pretty connected to those reasons, and I'm pretty straight about why I think it's a bad idea.
I love that. All right, I got two more questions for you. So, as a successful entrepreneur now, I'm assuming you don't need to work anymore and you can kind of just do your own thing. What keeps you going? What drives you to keep doing business deals and grow your business and so on and so forth?
No entrepreneur ever has enough. And I don't mean that they're greedy. Jeff Bezos, who's one of the richest, probably the richest guy in the world, is never set out to be the richest guy in the world. He did not have a number in mind. Or if he had a number, he surpassed that number so long ago. Mm-hmm. He keeps trying, or I keep trying. I'm hardly at the Jeff Bezos level. But we both keep trying because trying is fun. And you know, exercising our mind and doing what we do well is fun, and we love to do it. And we, in a way, only really know we're alive when we're on the brink of failure. That's kind of the only way we know we're alive. So we have to try things that are stretching ourselves. I don't think we'd be happy if we didn't do it. It has nothing to do with money.
So do you have, and this is in addition to the same question, do you have planned for birthing of giants, of how you're even going to grow it to, you know, higher levels or Moonshots and Moneymakers? Is there future plans that you have that you can share with us that you're just trying to be in the growth phase and get it going to grow it to an even bigger level?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go, I mean, I'm happy to share, but it's just a lot of detail. But I will say that there's this gigantic phenomenon taking place where it's a transition from this, let's say that startup person, you know, that sort of younger startup person with an idea. I think they're about to be displaced by kind of like a seasoned entrepreneur. And what I mean is, there's a lot of companies, a lot of owners of companies that do pretty well out there, that if they were to overlay technology on top of their business, those businesses would be worth 10 or 100 times more than they're currently worth. And they're starting to get that. So you might say, you know, I've got an idea for an app that'll bring a taxi to your front door using your smartphone. And all the taxi companies in the old days would have said, yeah, what's an app? I don't even have a smartphone. Now, I've just used that silly example. Everyone who has a company says, I wonder what the app is for my company. So we're not waiting for those kids anymore to displace us, which was an idea founded by a very smart Harvard professor named Clayton Christensen, who said, you know, the reason why older companies will be displaced by younger companies is because younger companies have nothing to lose, and they're going to try and do something with technology that an older company doesn't have any idea how to do. I think that's not true anymore. I think smarter, older companies know how to use technology now. And so those young people don't have quite the room that they used to have, because the more established companies are going to be doing it. So that's what Moonshots and Moneymakers is. It's a project we do at Oxford, which is all about teaching people who run money makers, in other words, companies that make money, good companies, to pivot to becoming moonshots, companies that can be 100 times bigger than they currently are if they find a way to use technology appropriately. You remember a gentleman named Greg Thoreau, who's in the janitorial services business. What's a sleepier business than janitorial services? Well, ever since Oxford, Greg has been using robots more and more, which has basically changed the profit potential of his business dramatically because of technology. And so, you know, and he actually introduced me to somebody who had a startup that uses robots. So I don't think innovation is the province of the young, wide-eyed, naive person anymore. It's actually going to become the province of the more seasoned business owner. And that's my moonshot. I'm trying to turn Moneymakers into moonshots. That's our moonshot.
Love that. That makes complete sense.
And for young people who are watching this like you, I think you have a tremendous role to play, because if you were to go sit with that moneymaker, if Ethan sat with Greg, Ethan looks at the world radically differently than Greg, and Ethan should say, here's what I think we can do, Greg, and Greg would be smart to listen to Ethan.
Now, this is a random question. Do you think it would be smart for people in those different age brackets to partner and be like, oh my God, I need to find, you know, a Greg, I need to find an Ethan or something like that?
100%. I think that the path to success is when an Ethan, who's a young person, goes to a Greg, who's a more experienced person, and says, I can add value. Let's create the robot, you know, part of our business. Let's make it a second company. Let me own a chunk of it. You'll guide it. You'll fund it. I'll develop it. That's how I think that's what all the Ethans of the world should be doing.
I love that. All right. Last question for you. We ask every guest this: favorite quote that has kept you motivated or positive over the years?
Well, you told me to prepare for this, so I'm going to give you the one from my young and hungry days, but I do find myself, even in my old wizened self, I find myself relying on this all the time. It's by a guy named Paul Tudor Jones. Build me a ship that goes fast because I plan to go in harm's way. So that's it. I've put that on a sign at every cubicle I've ever had on a piece of paper. Build me a ship that goes fast because I plan to go in harm's way.
I absolutely love that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Lewis Schiff, chairman of Birthing of Giants and Moonshot and Moneymakers, and a serial entrepreneur who used to cause a lot of trouble and was in harm's way for sure. Thank you, Lewis, for being here. I appreciate it, my man.
Thank you, Ethan. Thanks for the time.